Welcome back to another episode of Real Talk. I am your host, Officer Antoine Thomas. Yep, that's me. That's my intro. We got to do it. Listen, if you have not had the opportunity to listen to the last episode, we had a friend of mine on the show. He is running for U.S. Congress, okay, District 13. Matt Shoemaker. That was a great episode. We talked from all the way from his platform all the way to some of the things he's going to do when he is elected as the United States Congress representative. He has a special interest in intelligence, and we know how that looks. And so I believe his slogan is let's bring intelligence to DC, something to that effect. But I love it. It's pretty smart. But look, we are continuing to talk about political aspirations within this political season, and also the series that I'm doing on Real Talk. And I know many people may have it in mind, why are you bringing on politicians when your show is centered around policing? Because you cannot have policing without politics involved. And that's what our country has come to in the world today. And as many of you know, I said all the time, I am heavily involved in politics. I love it. And another guest I have with me today, Michele Morrow, I can speak for her. She also loves politics. She is a champion of school education. She is a champion for the public school system. She is a champion for people who are voiceless. And that is a lot of our parents who are seeing the indoctrination that are happening in our schools, okay, from CRT, DEI, transgenderism, all these things, reading books by drag queens and all these things that she is against. Michele has announced and officially announced that she is running for North Carolina School Superintendent of Public Education. And hopefully I got that right again. And if not, Michele's going to correct me, and I'm going to be happy that she did it. But she is a personal friend, and I'm so glad to have Michele on. I'm going to shut up and let Michele tell you more about her. But like I said, Michele is a strong advocate for our public schools and for our children. Let's say that at the most. And so she just wants to see the right people in office, and this is why she's running for that seat. So, Michele, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Antoine. Thanks so much for having me on.
I'm so glad that you can get on. I know our time schedules have not allowed us to get this done. We are now here, and it is getting done. So, Michele, tell the listeners about you who may not have had the chance. Let me say this real quick. I've been sharing with many people in this particular series that, as a candidate, you know all too well, when you go into these forums, they give you 30 seconds, sometimes a minute to try to explain your whole platform, which is never enough time. Right. And so today, this show is centered around Michele and just for her to get her message out. So, Michele, again, I want to let you explain to the audience who you are.
Thank you so much. Yes, I am a wife of 26 years. I'm a mom of 5. I am a Christian constitutional conservative, and I'm a nurse. I'm also an educator, and I've also been a community activist for the last 8 years since moving back to North Carolina. And really, my platform has been everything from education reform to medical freedom and election integrity. Really, for the last 5 years, I've been focused solely on what's happening in our school system. Because as a mom of 5, my kids have been in public school, they've been in private school, and they've been homeschooled. I feel like I have a really good idea of the benefits and maybe the pitfalls of each one of those options of schooling. And I believe that our schools are really in peril. Our kids are not prepared for adult life in the way that they should be, in the way that they were. Quite honestly, I graduated high school in Charlotte from South Mecklenburg. I went to college at UNC Chapel Hill. And it's a very different atmosphere of what's happening in our public schools today than what happened when I was in school or when you were in school. And I think we need somebody who is a hands-on reformer, a trusted leader, and somebody that is a true conservative who understands that academics need to be at the basis of every decision that is made for our schools, that we have got to make our schools the safest buildings in the entire state. And we need a true fiscal conservative who's going to make make this money stretch beyond what it has, we need to start with boots on the ground, the teachers, the resources, the staff, and needs for our students have to be first priority on the budget. So we really need an external audit to look at where this money is going to, because it is not getting down into the classrooms. We have teachers that have to work 2 jobs. We have them having to buy supplies for their classrooms. We're begging parents to bring in supplies when everybody's suffering under Bidenomics. So it's time for us to get in and get those things out of our schools that are not helping our children to achieve academically and to be prepared for adult life and for entering careers. There's a lot of superfluous special interest stuff going on, and we need to get that out of our budget and focus on giving a sound basic education to every student in North Carolina.
Because that is what they deserve, Michelle. And we
Right.
appreciate, first of all, I appreciate you for being a medical professional. We thank you for your tireless service to our hospitals and keeping every American and North Carolinian safe as it pertains to when they come into your care. We appreciate that. So you are bidding for another public service job. This is basically what you are. You are a selfless public service leader. And I know you personally, and I have for many years, and you have just been a champion. You are, again, a voice for the voiceless, and you don't mind being ridiculed and sometimes attacked. And I know that because you are a fighter. And I want to say to every listener before I forget, Michelle will be that voice, will be that fighter that we need in our public instructions, because we see, and I'm going to let Michelle talk about it, but she hit a lot of key points. And we see the indoctrination. And I know you have been to many school board meetings. You have spoken at these school board meetings. People know who you are. The of course, Wake County School Board know who you are, and they know that they're either going to get on board or you're going to at some point move them out. And that's what we need, because you said something very profound. Every student, not only in North Carolina, but America, should have an opportunity to have a good public education, because our taxpayers' money pay for this foundation. And you talked about the budget, but it's amazing how we talk about our ABC stores. Of course, a lot of that money allegedly goes to the school board lottery, but yet teachers are still having to buy their own supplies and things like that. And we know that our school board members are making a lot of money, probably more than any public servants locally are making. And for them to take this money proudly and then to turn around and give our parents a slap in the face is inappropriate, and it is definitely not needed in our society today.
Absolutely. And when you're talking, and thank you for your service, because that
Thank
one
you.
of the biggest things is we need police officers to be respected, and we need to bring back the law and order to our land, and we really need to do that within the classrooms. And so one of my platforms with safety is our staff and students deserve to know that when they go into that building, that they're going to be protected from outside threats as well as inside threats. And when I refer to that, so safety is kind of a twofold system. We've got to have resource officers in every school. That's just a given in today's world. We have got to have video surveillance system. That is not only going to protect our students, it's going to protect our teachers as well from false accusations, right? And so that we can actually see what's happening in the classrooms. And we also need weapons detection systems that can be determinant on which area you're working in, right? It might be more prevalent in some districts, and they decide that they want to do that. But we definitely need to be funding for that and thinking of that. But beyond that, beyond the doors of the school, so to speak, we need a code of conduct within our classrooms. I am hearing throughout the state, teachers can't teach because there is absolute chaos in the classrooms. I'm hearing that in middle schools and high schools, there are fights every single day. Did you know that it was just reported almost 1,600 teachers were assaulted on the job last year in North Carolina? That cannot stand. This is ridiculous. These should be the safest places in our state. It should be a place that everyone can't wait to get there in the morning. You and I both remember going to school, especially elementary school. It was fun. It was enjoyable. You liked to be there, right? Why is it now that it is like a war zone, and it's pitting even the administration against the teachers? I am hearing over and over again, the teachers, don't get the backing from the administration because Obama pushed restorative justice, which basically says you cannot put consequences onto our minority students because that's going to create this, this uneven, playing field for expectation. And I think the opposite is true, Antoine. Children need boundaries.
Yeah.
Kids need to know that if one of their peers or themselves gets out of line, there's going to be an adult that comes in and restores order, brings back peace, and allows the classroom to be a place of unity and a place that kids can focus and that they can learn. And that needs to be priority number one, because if we don't have that, we are wasting our students' time, and we're creating anxiety and depression and worry in the hearts and the minds of our little kids. And that is not okay.
100%. That is so power packed. I had some time to spend as an SRO underneath the umbrella of the Wake County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you for doing that.
Yes, and I can tell you that it is a job that is not for the faint of heart. It's definitely not a job for, and I know back in the day we would want a retiree, somebody with experience to go, or I
Yes.
should say, a person that's getting ready to retire,
Yes.
to go into these schools and help just be that that role model figure, right? But
Yes.
our role as SROs, and you know this, Michelle, has totally changed. We are not only supposed to be a role model, but we're supposed to help the counseling division. We're also supposed to be the disciplinary, which is really not what that SRO
Nope.
program was designed for. And you know that.
You're exactly right.
Yep, and the drugs that are coming into
Oh,
our country, but people don't know this. You do. The drugs in our public schools are out of hand, from the edible gummies that give you a euphoria. Of course, that marijuana sensation is out of control. God forbid all these other major drugs that at some point are going to hit our public schools if we don't get a handle on that. And you spoke so much about our school safety. I will often have students ask me, and I worked at a predominantly minority-based school, Black and Hispanic. And I'll tell you, the school is right there, East Wake Middle School, predominantly those two made up of races. Matter of fact, the white students were the minorities at that time. The majority was the Hispanics and the Blacks. But I had several students come up to me, and of course, they were the majority. I had a few Black students ask me, they said, "Why are you here?" And they were, and so what I did, I flipped that question around. I said, "Well, why do you think I'm here?" And their answers were just this: "You here to break up fights? You here?" I said, "No, technically, and the real reality is, no. I'm actually here to protect your life if some intruder were to enter this building." Okay, and it blew their mind, because they're not being taught that. They're being taught that the police are there to keep them from running the hallways, finding them in bathrooms, skipping school, and the break up fights. And Michelle, you said it best. That is not what we're there for. We're here to build that bridge between the community and the law enforcement.
absolutely.
Educate.
Absolutely. And also, like you're saying, so many, especially young men, they're coming from single mother households, and they need to see sound, strong men that can be role models, that can be like a father figure to them, that are going to be a positive influence in their life. And like you're saying, when you talked about the drugs, many people don't know this. 2 weeks ago, Charlotte Mecklenburg School Board was considering adding Narcan to their list of drugs that they have on hand and teaching teachers how to administrate it, because they're having so many um, overdoses with fentanyl. These are in our schools. Do we understand? These are not jails that we're worried about, right? These are not some clubs out on the street. These are our public school system. And I tell you, I was shocked. I was driving out to the mountains, and I just stopped in for something to eat with a friend of mine that was traveling with me on the campaign trail. And we ended up talking to a grandmother and her two eighth graders, okay, granddaughters that she was with. We're just in passing. My friend says, my friend's running for superintendent of schools. They said, well, you need to change something, because you know what? They said, we can't go to the bathroom all day. All of our bathrooms smell like weed. And the kids are in there throwing kitty litter into the toilets because they're pretending that they're cats. This is just a random grandmother and her kids in eighth grade it was like right outside of Winston-Salem. Okay. And I'm thinking, and this is happening everywhere. Then I started asking questions when I would have forums with the teachers and the parents. And I say, is this happening in your school? Absolutely. It's happening in my school. So not only are the teachers expected to be teaching kids to read and to do math when they don't have any attention span because they're allowed to run wild, right? They're expected to be the counselor and the social worker, and now they're expected to be an EMT professional. What are we doing? And we wonder why we can't get teachers to teach in our schools right now. And so it has to change, and it has to change from the top down. And it needs to be, we need to work with the legislature to make laws, and then we need to manage. And if school districts are not doing what they need to do from a safety standpoint, from a conduct standpoint, then they don't get the funding that they need. And that's essentially what it's going to come down to. Either you abide by the rules and you get control of your school, or we're not going to support, X, Y, or Z.
Excuse me, because at the end of the day, those things are very important, and you have to put those mandates on it. You have to put those mandates on it. This is a place where kids are supposed to come and be free of their minds, and like you said, to be happy and excited to go to school. But the most important part, to know and feel excited that they're learning something new that will challenge them, and at some point, as they begin to grow up, will be able to lead to a career.
Right.
And you said it right. We have to bring Narcan into a school so that the teachers and counselors, whoever who makes up the guardianship, will have to administer. This is out of control. We know that our country is flooded with fentanyl, but guys, you've heard, and women, you heard it first from Michele. It's reached our public schools.
Yep. And when you're talking about the open borders too, I don't know if many people know this. There is in the DPI, there is called newcomer schools. And we just saw the first response from this. And this is all about using our schools to house illegal aliens. And I don't know if you paid attention, but a couple weeks ago in New Hanover, that superintendent, by the way, our superintendents on the local level, they're all appointed. Okay, so you elect your school board members, but then the school board members appoint a superintendent. So we, as the public, have very little recourse against an appointed person, right? And so this superintendent took it upon himself to work with the U.S. Department of Education and to work with this newcomer program within the DPI, of which my opponent right now is the head of. And he was going to close down without talking to his board. They had no idea this was happening. Close down a school for special needs students and to put illegal aliens into that school. What's going to be happening here is we are going to now be rationing our education. We've got to put North Carolina citizens first and our families first. If our kids can't read right now on a national scale, less than 25% of our eighth graders are competent in math, reading, or science. Antoine, how are we going to continue as a nation with an uneducated adults that cannot get jobs, that they're not able to take on these leadership roles? They're not able to be the entrepreneurs and start new businesses. They're not able to be the CEOs. How are we going to continue to be strong economically and strong in technology and strong just as a state if our students are not ready and able to kind of take these roles of leadership as they enter into adulthood?
100%. And your colleague Natasha Toot spoke on that issue, and she's right there in New Hanover. She spoke about Dr. Faust, and we talked heavily about it. Now the listeners are listening to you say it. There's obviously truth, and there's proof in the pudding, and it is so mind-boggling, but it's also so out of control that a local school board will elect to remove the citizens that make up that community out to provide space for illegal immigrants. And as I stated on the last show with Matthew Shoemaker, as a Republican, we hear this all the time. We are the racist party. We are not. We are the party who champion to be free in our minds and our physical beings. And the fact of the matter is this, Michele, that we do not support illegal immigration. We support legal immigration. We're not saying don't come into our country. We're saying do it legally, lawfully, and wait your turn. And for us to see around the country, people, our citizens being kicked out of not only schools, but also community centers. I spoke about it last episode. There, about the story where they was forced to close down this community center that actually helped the minority community be better citizens and help keep their children off the streets from being victims of violence and also drugs, and they moved them out to allow space for basically a overnight camp for illegal immigrants.
Yeah. And this is the problem. The US Department of Education, I mean, I know that's the Department of Justice, right? But
Right.
the federal government has just gotten so deep into every state, and that's not constitutionally who they're supposed to be. Constitutionally speaking, from an education perspective, the US Department of Education has no right to exist. The Congress is not given jurisdiction over our education. Our
Correct.
North Carolina state constitution says that our General Assembly is the one that has the duty of providing a sound, basic moral education for the students here in North Carolina. We have got to have a firewall between us and the US Department of Education, and I am that firewall. My opponent has literally rubber stamped every divisive, racially charged, sexually explicit, academically weak curriculum idea and program and mandate that's come down from the US Department of Education. She's just rubber stamped them and sits there and says, I don't have any power. I have to do it. You don't have to do it. We don't have to accept that money that comes with these, not just strings, it comes with chains attached to it. And
Wow.
it's time for us to cut those ties. That's why we've got to look at our budget, and we need to figure out how is it that 30%, over 30% of our tax money is going to education in North Carolina. Last year, it was a $13 billion budget. Why is it that our children cannot read, write, or do math? Why is it that our kids are not able to enter into a career? There are some really great trade schools, in high school. There's some great internships happening throughout the state. There's some great associate level classes that we're partnering with the community colleges. Antoine, there is no excuse for that not being in every single high school in North Carolina. We have got to understand we are not raising children, we're raising adults.
That's
And
right.
they need to be able to problem solve and to think critically and to have logical debate and civil discourse. Those are the things that actually unite us as a country. Those are the things that made us the most prosperous and the greatest
Mhm.
nation in the history of the world. It was people coming together with different ideas, but they didn't call people names. They didn't cancel them. They didn't hate them. They didn't threaten them. They came together and they found common ground. Because I will tell you, education is the most uniting issue today on the ballot. Why? Because it doesn't matter your race, your religion, or your politics. Everyone wants our children to be well prepared to enter into adulthood and to pursue careers that are financially successful as well as personally, rewarding, and are going to give back to the community, and they're going to build up the community that they've come from. That's what we expect from our educational system. And after 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 months out of the year for 13 years, I don't think it's too much to ask that our kids are ready to enter into the workforce and to be productive members of society.
Well said. I'll say it this way: point blank, period. All that stuff that you stated. That is 100%. And look, let me answer that. And you know the answer, but to all the listeners, why is this happening? Because our public school officials are spending so much time on gender affirming care, DEI, CRT, telling kids that guess what, like you stated, you can be cats and dogs, okay?
Yes.
You can be anything, and focusing on their pronouns, except from getting back to what you stated: math, arithmetic, okay, and like we said, reading and writing. Those are the things that we champion for. That's all we need from the school system. And at the end of the day, when those kids come out of those schools, they should go home and be able to tell their parents something great that they learned, and then
Right.
have a good night's rest and go back and do it all over again. That's all we need the school system for, to educate.
That's right. And unfortunately, I think we have really, those of us that went through the public school system, we figured it was good enough for us, it'll be good enough for our kids, right? And really, until COVID happened and we started listening to what was truly going on in the classrooms, I think most people just assumed that what was happening in the school was happening when we were kids. But here's the reality. When I'm talking about with this federal government, they're the ones that have been pushing all of these agendas. Because if we go back, let's say 12 years, right? The federal government says, do you guys need some money? And of course, money, hello, I'll take
Yeah,
money,
I'll
right?
take
And
it.
they say, okay, well, if you want money, then you need to promote Common Core, right? This was back at the beginning of Obama's reign.
Mhm.
So you need to do Common Core, and then we did that for a few years, and that meant we had to completely spend money to transpose all of our curriculum so that it was fitting into this Common Core,
Mhm.
ideology that the United States is inherently racist. We need to start telling kids that socialism is the answer, that that capitalism is evil, and all this. That was all put through with this agenda in mind. Okay, so then Common Core, people start fighting back against it because they're like, this doesn't seem like we're actually teaching our kids anything academically sound. So then they said, well, maybe that's because we're not asking our kids how they feel about these subjects. So then we went into social emotional learning, the SEL. Well, you know what? The whole premise for putting iPads into the hands of every student was these surveys, the SEL surveys. And that was mandated by the US Department of Education. And you
Mhm.
know what it is? It's a data mining system where they are giving the results of what our children are putting into that computer. They're sending it to the CDC, they're sending it to the NIH. We're paying for our children to be giving them data. And what they're measuring, Antoine, is just how well they are absorbing this socialist mantra.
Mm.
That's what they're testing. They're testing to see just how well are we doing at changing our children's worldview to be what we deem it should be, which is that globalist worldview, right? That the United States is bad and we need to be repenting of all our past sins. And we need to be we need to be teaching our children to think as global citizens rather than as American citizens, right? That America first thing is very dangerous. That was SEL. So that wasn't producing results. And so they decided that we needed to do CRT, critical race theory, right? And that was determined, that's totally to divide us up. That is literally telling our students that your character and your future is determined by the color of your skin. It's
Mhm.
100% racist. That
Yeah.
is not who we are as a nation, and it's not who we are as individuals. We are so much more than the color of our skin. So people weren't really excited about that. So what do? Then we do DEI and we say, now we're going to force you that you are going to have to hire so many people that have this lifestyle, so many people of this color, so many people of this culture. And that is how we're going to determine whether or not you have been obedient to the globalist plan. This all needs to be stopped because we are paying them to do this. Because when you're looking at the directors, when you're looking at the bureaucracy, you're looking at the administration in our schools, the majority of our money is going to make sure that every one of our 115 districts is obeying the rules of Common Core, SEL, CRT, and DEI. If we will get rid of those programs, we will have money to actually have curriculum that's teaching our children how to think rather than what to think.
Well said. That was a powerful pack moment because people, our parents, have gotten to hear this. And there's many teachers who obviously are parents and they don't know this stuff. They just are trying to go day to day, trying to do the right thing. Of course, they
Right.
know about how this stuff is being pushed on them, but they are just, I'm sure they're blinded as it pertains to what you just stated because they're so busy trying to do the day to day. But it's
Right.
good to hear this from you on a large scale because these things are very important. And from what all you stated, I gather that the government is using our public school systems as a measurement to
Yes.
measure what their ideals and ideologies should look like.
100%. And then they're determining like how much they need to keep pushing these agendas based on kind of what the responses are of the students, right? And where they're falling on these surveys and things. And so, it's so important. Antoine, if we don't get this right, we're not going to have a constitutional republic. Like they're training our children to be embarrassed by the color of their skin. They're training them to be ashamed of being called an American. They're training them that they are entitled to things just because they're breathing. They're teaching them to be false victims rather than to be victorious over whatever difficulty you have in your life. Last night I had the pleasure of being at an event with Dr. Ben Carson. And you know the story of Ben Carson. He is the quintessential American, American success story. Not only
Mhm.
growing up in abject poverty, but he was called the dumbest person in the world. I mean, you know how kids are, they're being mean, but he really thought he was dumb. He couldn't read. He was getting zeros in math, and he really had convinced himself that he
Mhm.
was stupid. He goes on to be the most renowned neurosurgeon in the history of the world. His brother, same thing, was failing out of school, and he ended up being what's it called, a rocket scientist with NASA. I mean,
Wow.
and this is the thing, our children are filled with potential. They are filled with, when they're young, a desire to learn, a desire to please, a desire to be excellent at something, and healthy competition. We have got to raise the bar of expectations, and we need to offer them these opportunities to be more than they think that they can be, rather than telling them, you are defined by this, you will be this, you will do this, you will say this. It's got to stop. We've got to open our schools back up to being places of hope, and places of promise, and places of excitement, where people are going to think, wow, I see somebody doing that, I want to do that, and I want to even do better. That's what we need to do. Raise the bar academically, raise the bar in conduct, raise the bar in expectation, and raise the bar of opportunity for our students.
Well said. Listeners, if you haven't heard anything, I want you to know, and I'm sure you feel the passion in Michele's heart and voice. This is the real Michele. And not only is she passionate, she's also sound. She does research, and that is what we need. And this research is not necessary for her, it's for you. And this is a type of leader that we need all the way on our state level, who will say no to things that shouldn't be, that will say yes to things that need to be. Michele, what I want to do as we wrap up, I want you, when God blesses you to grace that wonderful seat, how will you work with our state legislators to
Well,
bring
that's a great question. I've already been doing it from the outside. For the last 5 years, I've been going to the legislature, and I've been fighting for us as North Carolina citizens. And I want everybody to recognize, in this past year and a half, I've been working with something called the Pavement Education Project, and we have set up a website so that we could alert parents as to when there is inappropriate content in the school libraries of their children's schools. And I've been talking around the state to parents and to teachers, and just to concerned citizens. So what we did as a Pavement Education Project, myself and Jim Walsh, we went and met with 26 legislators last year at this time, from January through March, and we told them laws that other states have already put in place to protect our kids and to respect parental rights and to get back to the basics of education. And then we showed them laws that we currently have on the books here in North Carolina, but they might need to be tweaked, because right now many school districts around the state are kind of using loopholes, in order to get through what the intention of the law was. So we said, maybe we could tweak this, we could tweak that. And then we said, these are other laws that you might want to consider, where we see the direction of what's happening in our public school system. And they were so attentive, they were so appreciative, because we left them with 3-ring binders of all of this information. So I believe that as the Department of Public Instruction, my goal, my role is to be an advocate for the school systems, an advocate for the people of North Carolina, for the families, for the students, and to go to the legislature and say, this really needs to be handled. This is an issue that we're seeing, in a majority of the districts here in North Carolina. And I think this needs to be discussed, and finding people who are the professionals, who are the experts, to go and to help our legislators to write those laws, because the legislature writes the law, and then the State Board of Education writes the policy. And what we need is, we need policy writers who are conservative minded, who believe in the rule of law, who believe in making education, putting education and academics first, right, in our schools, that are going to write the policies to offer to the State Board of Education to vote on. Because I've heard from my opponent a lot. I've heard from other people going around the state, oh, the superintendent doesn't have any power. The superintendent doesn't have any power. Well, here's what I do have. If you don't have the gavel, you have the microphone. And if you can get people together and find common ground, and you can offer to them solutions that then they can vote on, that is how we get things done. And that's what I'm going to do. I've already done it from the outside in. I want to do it from the inside out. And I believe we can have dramatic reform in our school system. And once again, we can be. United States for many years was always in the top 3 nations for public schools. We have fallen. We're, I think, 27th or 28th right now. We need to get back up to that first, second, and third position. And we in North Carolina are going to do it and become the greatest educational system in the country. And we'll show the rest of our states how they can follow in our tracks.
Very well said. I really enjoy listening. I'm being educated on the little bit that I know. You have enlightened my mind totally. And I know this personally that Michele will be, she's not only our best candidate that's in this race, she is the candidate. And I know what Michele will do, and I know what she has done. And Michele, I would like to formally send you my full endorsement for your campaign. And I want to
Thank
tell all
you.
my law enforcement friends who live in this great state that Michele is the answer for your children. I personally don't have any children yet. But I do have nephews, and I have one particular nephew that lives in Wake County who
Okay.
is affected by this garbage that the public school system's teaching. My other nephews moved to Florida, which is where I'm originally from. But I
Oh,
want to say, so I do have some skin in the game, and just all my friends. Whether that be in church or work or just the makeup of my friendship outside of those areas that have kids that will be affected and are affected. And so I know personally that Michele, you will be again that voice of reason and that person that we need. And I know you're going to work strongly with whoever the Lord graces us with the lieutenant governorship. And so we're looking forward to those great things. But Michele, as we prepare to wrap up, I want you to let the listeners know where they could go and help you. And I want to say this because I know I stated to Miss Two that the hardest part about campaigning is asking for money. So I
yes.
want to do that for you. People, we tell you to please go and support her financially. Campaigns are very tough to run when you look at the finances behind it. And Michele needs your help, and she solicits your help. Her opponent who is the incumbent right now, has tons of money because she's been able to garner those things by being elected in that seat. But Michele's coming from humble beginnings, so please support her financially, and I will let Michele take it from there to tell folks how they could continue to support your candidacy and vote for you on March the 5th.
Yes, or go out early and vote. Early
Really?
voting starts February 15th, believe it or not, next week until March 2nd. But thank you so much, Antoine. Your endorsement means a lot. And really I am so excited to get to work and to make our educational system what it needs to be for all of our students, because really this impacts all of our future, whether you have students in school or not, whether your kids are grown, whether your kids are going to private school or you're homeschooling them or whatever it might be. In 10 short years, every second grader will be a voting adult. So let that soak in. And so you can go to my website. It's michelemorrownc.com. Michele has one L, Michele. Morrow is MORROWNC.com. And I would appreciate any funds that you can give me so that I can get some mailers out or some advertisements out. I've been to 38 out of our 100 districts, our counties rather, in the last 6 weeks, but I'm not going to be able to make it to all 100 unless I win on March 5th, and then I'm going to make it a point to make it all the way around. But anything that you can give is incredibly helpful, or if you can just spread the word. If anybody wants to volunteer and stand at the polls, that's amazing, because most people know who they're voting for president and governor, maybe lieutenant governor, but once you get to that down ballot race, people kind of get blurry eyed and they feel like you've given them the answer to a test. If you say, hey, vote for Michele Morrow, she's going to change our schools, they're like, oh, awesome. I know a name on here. So that's a great help too. And you can sign up to volunteer and get linked up with like-minded folks in your area. And who knows, you might find a great friend. So michelemorrownc.com. And I would appreciate all of your support.
Michele, it's been a pleasure knowing you, and it is a pleasure watching you in this campaign race. And I pray that victory will be yours to get you through the primaries, and then we continue on to the general. And all help is needed, and all hands on deck. And I'm doing my part. I wanted to bring you onto this show and just let you be able to explain who you are, your platform. And so we want everybody to go out around this state. Okay, go early, and definitely if you don't make it early, we need you on March 5th. Let
Yes.
nothing hinder you from voting. And when you go vote, we need you to vote right. And I always say this so that you do not get left behind. And so when you look at this, Michele again is running for North Carolina Superintendent of Public Instruction. And so
Yes.
please lend your vote. Michele, it has been a pleasure to have you on this show. And as I always say on my show, reach one, teach one, and God continue, please, to bless the men and women that are serving around our country and our states that are wearing blue, the uniform of being a police officer. Please continue to protect and protect us as we go throughout our daily tours. And God continue, please, to bless our men and women that are serving in our armed forces, and with a special interest on the Israeli war right now that is taking place. And Lord, we know that you will bring victory to those wonderful people, and continue to help us in some way, somehow uplift our president, who we got to admit is not living up to what a president should be. But we're not here to talk bad. We just want to pray for him that he does the right thing. And also on March the 5th in early voting, we hope that we're able to elect the new candidate for presidency. And so we know who that is. And I'm saying it, Donald Trump. I pray that is
Amen. That's right.
that's what we got to have. And let me say this. I know I'm ending, but I want to make it clear. I say this all the time. No, Donald Trump is not our savior. We don't even compare him to Ben. There's only one savior. But he is the best choice for the United States that's going to be that strong voice of reason and tell these countries who has taken advantage of us no, and to bring about a financial change, a law enforcement change, because he's definitely for law and order. And not only that, public instructions, which is what is important to Michele as she runs for office. So all those things are being said, and we hope that these things come to light. And until the next show, we appreciate your support. Continue to like, share, and subscribe to the Real Talk podcast. And I am your host, Officer Antoine Thomas, and you have been listening to the Real Talk with my special guest, Michele Morrow. Until then, we'll do it again.